So today we're here with Ellis Potter, who is the author of The Three Theories of Everything. When did you write that book, by the way?
That was 2 years ago.
2 years ago. He is a former Buddhist monk. He used to work with Francis Schaeffer in Le Brie for about 16 years, I believe,
yes.
Correct? And he is now a pastor in Lωzάνη,
Yes.
in Switzerland.
Yes.
He is originally from California and now lives in Switzerland. How long have you been in Switzerland?
40 years.
40 years. So you're actually more Swiss than you are American.
In some ways.
In some ways.
Yes.
Ellis is also a musician, and he's joined us here in Greece to talk about theology and art. And yes, we'd like to talk to you a little bit about that, if that's okay.
Fine.
So in the last few days that I've gotten to know you, we've come to realize that you have a different definition of art than what we would define it. Could you tell us a little bit about how you define art?
Yes, my definition of art is different from most people's definition of art because most people don't have a definition of art.
Okay.
They talk about it, but they're not sure what they're talking about. They talk about examples or particular media of art, but the idea of what art is usually not wrestled through by people. And I think that it might be valuable to do that. I've wrestled through it in my own way and have come to my own conclusions, which I think might be useful to people. And it seems to me that fundamentally and globally, art is deliberate human action, which is a broad definition, but consider what it leaves out. It leaves out accident. So art is not something that happens to you, art is something that you do. And it leaves out what God does or what nature is. Art is always artificial, made by the arm of the human. So it's what human beings do, not what nature does or what God does. Not that nature is bad or not beautiful or enjoyable or valuable, it is, but it doesn't fit in the circle of art. Art is what people do. And it is action. It's not pure imagination or transcendence or a feeling, but it's something that you actually do, something that you write or cook or say or paint or sculpt or dance or compose or sing. It's an action. So deliberate human action.
So basically anything that we do is art, as long as it's deliberate.
As long as it's deliberate.
Okay, so underneath that definition, what would you categorize as good art versus bad art? Or is that even possible within that definition?
Yes, I think it's possible. The definition doesn't assume that all art is good or profitable or enjoyable. It assumes that it is deliberate and human and active. Then you ask, is there good art and bad art? And of course that depends on what good is. And you can have different ways of understanding goodness in relation to art. You can have goodness in relationship to particular schools or periods or styles of art. The question, does the art accurately, fully, successfully express within a certain system or style? So is it good Baroque music? Excuse me, does it fit within the parameters of Baroque music? Is it good music? That would be a narrow understanding of good art. And then bad art bad Baroque music, for instance, would be a music that is not purely within the Baroque style, or a music that is Baroque but sloppy, or music that colors outside the Baroque lines, something like that. Then it would be bad music or music that is not well crafted or not well performed with lots of mistakes in it, where you have the composer's intention and then you have that intention not carried out by the musicians who perform it, then there would be something bad or wrong. So you could have technically good with internal integrity good or bad, technically bad, or with internal integrity bad. Then a lot of people understand art as good or bad in terms of their own taste. But I think that is not very useful, because we just fight with each other about that, because taste is, of course, subjective. It's not, you don't have objective taste. There are objective criteria for evaluating good Baroque art, but what someone likes or dislikes about the various Baroque paintings or music is subjective, and we can't really discuss it. So the Romans had a proverb. They said, de gustibus non est disputandum. Taste is not discussable.
Right.
If I say my favorite color is blue, and you say, well, no, you're wrong, it shouldn't be, it should be red, then that's ridiculous. We cannot have...
because it's what you think personally, and
That's right.
then my favorite color could be green.
Well, it isn't actually what I think, it's what I feel, which is
Okay.
quite different than what I think.
How so?
Taste is not a thought. Taste is a feeling. Taste
Okay.
is a gut reaction. Taste is an appetite. Taste is what I enjoy, what gives me pleasure. And that's not something I think about. That's
So it's
something
a-
that I
a gut feeling
that I
in a sense.
experience viscerally, physically, psychologically. It's not a conclusion that I come to. It's an experience that I have. What I like and what I don't like is actually not something that I do or choose. It's something that happens to me. I am passive to my likes and dislikes. If I walk into a room and there are 10 people and I meet them all, I like one of them the most and I like one of them the least. That's not something I think through and choose. That's something
just
that
happens.
It just happens to me. I'm quite passive. I just receive that. Then I make choices. I might choose to completely ignore and avoid the people I like least and only hang out with the people that I enjoy the most.
I think we're all guilty of, right?
Well, this does happen from time to time. It is a choice that we make. Or I might choose the people that I don't like really might have hidden depths or have needs that I might meet, or there might be something positive about spending time with and having contact with the people that I don't like, and I might deliberately choose that. The choices about who I am with and the actions of connecting with the people I like, the people I like the least, or the people that I like the most, those choices and those actions are art.
Right.
My reaction, what happens to me in liking or disliking the people, that's nature. That is not art. I'm not responsible for what happens to me. I am a victim of what happens to me.
I see. So in a sense, your gut feeling, your taste in a sense, is just something that happens, and then how you work with that taste, then your reaction to it, that is art.
Yes.
Okay.
Unless it's an automatic reaction, like a knee jerk or something, then that's not art.
That's not
if,
art, okay.
If something hits my knee and it does that, or if I'm angry with you and I make the same motion and I kick you in the knee, that is art.
Yes, the
But-
art of kicking.
yeah.
Otherwise known as the martial arts.
Yes, but what happens to me is not art. What I choose to
to
do is art, and what happens to me is not art. In the broader, perhaps absolute sense of good art or bad art, we want to have absolute criteria of goodness and badness. Okay. I'm a pastor. I'm a Christian. I understand good and bad in terms of the Bible. And I understand good as what is actually real, that belongs to reality as it actually is in the full and eternal sense of reality. And I understand bad as something that is a distortion or an alternative of what is originally fully real and good, and something that will not last, something that will disappear, something that will be destroyed or blown away like a puff of smoke.
Could you give us examples?
I would rather continue with a general definition,
Okay, I'm sorry,
which I
yes.
haven't finished, before I give examples of that. It seems to me, from reading the Bible and from my own thinking and experience, that reality is who God is, what he does, and what he wants. So good art will belong in that reality and will promote it and will encourage people who receive the art to move into reality rather than away from it. So good art will encourage people to be more human, to be more fully in the image of God. And the good art might do that by comforting people, or challenging people, or rebuking people, or encouraging people. So there could be a variety of ways that the art works, pleasant or unpleasant. But the telos, the goal of the art, if it's good art, is to make people more fully human, more actually in the image of God, which the Bible tells us will be a permanent reality and condition. So the good art is a blessing in the sense of increasing us, adding to our lives, adding to our sense of love, our sense of community, our sense of relationships, our sense of responsibility, and our sense of action, and a mandate to increase the complexity of the reality that God has made. If art does that, then it's very, very good, and it increases who we are.
So, yeah, going back to my then earlier question, what would you use as a good example, or an example of good art versus to the example of bad art? Can you give us something more tangible?
I don't know if it's profitable to give specific examples, because art that is done is always in a context.
Okay.
And the same thing that is done might be good in one context and bad in another context. So if a woman has a 3-year-old child and she walks in the city with this child, and this child starts to run into the street where the cars and trucks are going by, the woman would choose artistically to grab that child and jerk him off the street and deliberately frighten him, which would be a very violent thing, but it would be love. It would increase the life of that child and his awareness of reality around him. It would be very educational. It would be really a blessing to the child. But it would be painful and frightening, but it would be quite good. So goodness doesn't mean pleasant or something that I like. Goodness means something that is good for me. Profitable. Profitable for me. But if the woman sees a child with other people and she goes over and jerks that child's arm and frightens him out of the context of the emergency situation,
not so good.
That would be bad art.
Yes, that would be. Absolutely. So when we look at visual art, we often say it's either beautiful or not beautiful. Would you agree with that? Like, do you think that beauty is, like, can there be objective beauty, or is beauty more subjective?
It's both. I think there are objective criteria for beauty that might not be recognized and appreciated by everyone, but would be objectively there. I would say proportionality. I'm a musician. I'm not a visual artist. And because I'm a musician, I have realized that simple ratios in music, ratios of 1:1, 1:2, and 2:3, which would correspond to the unison, the octave, and the fifth, are more stable than more complex relationships. So a minor second or a ratio of 3:25 would be a very unstable relationship in reality, in the physics of sound. And it would create tension, and people would feel, experiencing this ratio in sound, would feel a need for resolution. Whereas if you have the ratios of 1:1, 1:2, and 2:3, people would experience the reality of resolution. Now, if there is only resolution, there's no dynamism, there's no narrative, there's no interest, there's
No intrigue.
It's not very good. It's very flat. There's no journey. There's no quest. There's nothing. There's nothing that goes on. But the good music has both. It has the simple ratios as a framework, as a security, as a home, as a basic focus of reality. And then within that, it has an infinite variety of complex tensions and resolutions and wanderings off and coming home and narrative aspects to it. So it seems to me that as we live only in one reality, that visual art probably functions in the same way, that there would be basic structures of the golden mean, 2:3, the ratios of unity and 1:2, the proportions of a physical object or movement that would be a basic framework that is stable. And then within that framework of stability and being at home, there should be dynamism and tension. So it would seem to me that you could say an objective criteria for beauty is that there is both.
Okay.
There is the basic stable ratios and relationships, and there are the unstable, complex, tense relationships, that there should be both. And an interesting mix of both that would be stimulating and stabilizing.
At the same time.
At the same time. And that, I think, is an objective criteria for beauty. Then different people are going to experience, react to that in different ways, and that is going to be expressed in an infinite variety of ways. But people generally will experience any form of art that has a mix and a balance of the stable ratios and the unstable tense ratios as satisfactory.
Okay. You keep talking about relationships. And in your talk yesterday, you were talking about art as being consumed versus to a relationship. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. If art is deliberate human action, art is what people do. It is an expression of themselves. And we can either relate to the person through what they do, or we can consume or not consume what they do. The consuming or not consuming is basically prostitution, or not relating to people. It's just a commercial, that a commercial reality, the person is a product. and what they do is a product, and I eat it or I don't eat it. I buy it or I don't buy it. I look at it, I listen to it, or I don't relate to it. But if the art is deliberate human action, and each human is made by God in his image, then if the Bible is true, we have a mandate from God to love our neighbor, which means when we are confronted with various artistic expressions, our goal should be to love the human who makes those expressions, not to enjoy or consume those expressions, or to ask questions about whether it is good for me. That is a question of diet. So for instance, many times parents ask me, what kind of music should I let my children listen to? What kind of movies should I let my children watch? And that's a loving, caring question, but the problem is it's a question about diet. It's a question about what kind of music would be a good, healthy diet for my children to consume. What kind of movies would be a good, healthy diet for my children to consume? And I would say a more Christian question would be, how can I help my children to understand the various expressions and to love the minds and hearts and humans from which those expressions come?
And so how would you actually then advise the parents to do that?
Well, I would say listen to music with your children.
Okay.
And make an effort to understand what the music is saying, and then talk with the children about what the music is saying. Now, when I say what the music is saying, most people will think in terms of words or lyrics. And that, of course, is part of it, but not all music has words. It's music, it's sound organized by human beings, and it is a language, and it says something. Film also is a language. Film is not like ice cream. Film is not a flavor of chocolate bar that you eat. Film is something that someone wants to say and spends a lot of time and money and expertise and talent to say it. And we don't have to agree with or enjoy what the person says, but we do need to, because of God's command, love the person who says it. So we need to understand what they say, not in terms of do I like it or do I not like it, but in terms of what it actually says, so that we can respond. We can have a responsible reading of the arts. So we are able to respond, we are responsible, and we respond to the artist, which means to everyone, with a telos of love and blessing, which doesn't mean we agree with them. It means that we respect them as made in the image of God, and we hear in various ways what they say in various ways, and we respond to it, rather than just eat or don't eat.